Hello. The last time I featured the Tier 7 Royal Navy Premium ship or battleship, the Nelson, I was under the impression that the heel was still subject to change. That's why I chose a game where the heel didn't play that much of a role. However, since then I have been able to confirm through Wargaming that this is most likely going to be pretty much the final version of the ship. It's unlikely they're going to change anything, and the heel that it has right now is something it's going to keep. So obviously I decided to make a new commentary then, and now I'm treating this as pretty much a finished ship, and I'm commenting on it based on that. First of all, accuracy, pretty goddamn sweet at times. I mean, of course you get the battleship RNG, but in general the guns tend to be fairly rewarding. As you can see, sadly no Citadel on that shores, but still long range and short range the ship is quite strong. You notice of course the turret placement is fantastic, and unlike the Izumo, the third turret doesn't face backwards but it faces forwards, which of course means that you can switch sides and you can change courses and still keep all three guns on target, which is of course what makes it so good. You can see the slight amount of angling I have to give to be able to shoot that third turret, but that's not really too much of an issue since the armor is pretty okay on the broadside. Note that unlike all the other Royal Navy battleships that I've been reviewing and showing off here recently, the Nelson does not have that nice underwater citadel. The Nelson has a very high citadel that comes, I would say, almost halfway up the deck. It's a very easily citadelable ship if you do give broadside. But then again, you should really not ever be giving broadside in the ship because, well, the turret placement is so damn good, and honestly that's you screwing up if you do end up giving full broadside to someone and getting citadeled. So that should be avoidable. The bow is 25mm, which of course means that every battleship at your tier is going to be able to overmatch it, and lower tier things like Bayern and Warspite will be able to overmatch it. The middle of the ship, the deck, and higher parts of the broadside are 32mm, which means of course IFHE vulnerability. So those are pretty common things honestly for tier 7 battleships. Health pool are a bit less than 60k. Doesn't quite match up to some of the really tanky ones, but it's not like 59.4k is a bad health pool. It's still more than other ships like Scharnhorst, for example, so kind of sits in the middle of the pack there. Only 4 heals with both Superintendent and the Premium heal, but these heals are of course very superior. These are much better than the normal heals you get because, well, it does have the Royal Navy super heals that you usually only get at tier 9 and tier 10. AA wise, the ship has garbage at tier. I've tried experimenting with some things like running AFT and the AA range mod, but the biggest issue this ship has is that almost all its AA, all the strong AA it has, wow, I can't believe I just missed that, I didn't expect him to stop. Almost all the AA this ship has is very short range. It has a 2 km aura and I think like what, the 3 km, no, 2 and a 2.5 km range auras. That's the short and the mid range. Basically both are short though, so even if you go AFT and the range mod, the ranges you get are pitiful. So ultimately I decided to not worth it, not even gonna bother, and instead I just gave up on AFT and spec the fire prevention instead. So if a carrier goes for you, sure, he'll be able to land some torps and bombs, but at least the bombs will be unlikely to start more than one fire. The game so far fairly passive. My Koenig looks like he's kind of YOLOing in at A, so I expect him to die, and just as I said that, he does die, and there are actually some huge issues on this flank now. This constant smoking by the enemy team, they have a smoked up Fuso in there, so I can't really just YOLO in, and they have DDs in the smoke, so I'm just trying to get some picks, trying to kill off 1 or 2 of them so we could get something happening here, but not having the best volleys right now. Not having the best volleys. The targets are moving surprisingly slow. I expect them to move full speed because moving slow puts you at risk to to cruisers especially. The T-22 is caught in the open. He looks like he's going to die to the cruiser, so I'm going to try to punish the Akatsuki instead of wasting my volley on the T-22. Dispersion looks pretty good, and the damn nice chunk. Sadly no no full pens, but 5 overpens should be more than enough to secure as a kill. So suddenly we have both the DDs dead, and now we should be able to cap and perhaps get something done on this flank. Moving on about this ship, I do think the Nelson is a pretty damn strong ship. I thought it was a strong ship even when it didn't have the heal. Now that the heal is pretty much confirmed that it's going to have this super heal, it's possibly one of the best tier 7 ships overall, or well, not overall, because things like Belfast, Saipan and such things exist, but probably one of the best, if not the best, tier 7 battleship. So that of course leads to more power creep at tier 7. Poor Colorado, oh my lord. Playing Colorado gets more, like Colorado used to be so garbage, then it got buffed, but now tier 7 has been power creeped so much that they kind of have to buff it again. But oh, am I pink? I think I'm pink. Whoopsie daisy. Anyway, you all know why I'm pink, since if you watched my HMS King George V commentary, you know why I'm pink. Finally landing some hits on this dude. He's been reversing back and forth behind his island, and I've been unable to hit him because, well, he's kind of been playing with fire and been getting away with it. Need to make sure I angle in towards this Fuso. As I said, if you do get broadside in this thing, you are very likely to get Citadel. I'm gonna try to push in. We are down to 5 ships against 10. 5 versus 10, not exactly looking that promising. Taking double fires here. Of course, if you do have 2 fires on you, then it's perfectly fine to use your repair. And I do pop my heal. A bit early perhaps for the heal, but considering I'm still under fire, so the heal will have a lot of time to work and a lot of extra healing to do while I'm taking this damage. You see how quickly, of course, the heal works. I do think it was a bit too early on the heal, but honestly I'm pushing into 5 ships. So I wanted to play it safe. Even in imperfect use of the heal still shows just how strong it is. And of course it also reactivates faster than the normal heal. So I'm not running Jack Dunkirk in this commentary, since I wanted to make one without Jack Dunkirk, since not everyone has it. So this is just a normal Royal Navy commander. Fuso looks like he is finally going to get killed. Enemy has 800 points. We have 255, so this is of course a bit of a rough game. Shores gives me a nice fat broadside, and well, when you do that in a Shores, you do get Citadel. Emile Bertin can kind of get away with it because you tend to get a ton of overpens because it's so thinly armored, but something like a Shores has so much Citadel, it just doesn't work out. So Nelson is, as I said, a ship that I do think is quite great because of this. Well, overall, the turret placement, the speed. I mean, it's not going to break any speed records. I think it does 24 knots. So, like the German battleships are still going to outpace it completely. But it's not as slow as the Colorado. It's pretty much the same speed as the Nagato. I think Nagato had about the same speed. Could have been like 25 knots on the Nagato. Don't quote me on that though. But overall, it doesn't have the issues of the Colorado being so slow. And of course, unlike the Colorado, it doesn't suffer as heavily, even though it eats all the HE spam the Colorado does as well. It doesn't suffer as heavily because it has the massive heal available. Finally kill him with 5 overpens, not surprising because it is an Emile Bertin. He did get his torps off, gotta make sure I dodge those, because torps are of course a real problem for the Nelson since they limit your healing. Oh, that was a shame. I should have eaten it on the nose. I was hoping to dodge it entirely, but the safer bet would have been to eat it on the nose, because then I could have healed a lot of the damage. Instead I ate it on the broadside, which while that benefits from the torpedo bulge and reduces the damage, hitting it on the broadside counts as a Citadel hit in terms of healability, which means that I can't really heal it back. So that was quite unfortunate. Well, a misplay from me in that sense. But we are still pretty okay. We were 5 versus 10 and we brought it down to 4 versus 6. Really trying to bring it back for my team here. This is the only cap we actually have. Some additional torps from the Scharnhorst as expected. I have a Mars behind me, but I think the Sims should be able to deal with that. I have an Atlanta spamming me, but Atlanta once again, HE spam and fires are not that big of a deal to me because I have this super heal. So actually the biggest issue is the Koenig, because I cannot fight those other two because it would force me to give broadside to this guy. And as I said, the Citadel is quite raised on this ship and something you have to keep in mind. And now some other quirks on this, besides having the raised Citadel, is that this ship actually has much tankier turrets than all the other Royal Navy battleships. One of the common traits of the Royal Navy battleships is that they have these flat turret faces, which is of course a huge downside because they don't bounce shells as well, and also that the turret faces have 381 millimeters of armor. Even the Conqueror has these weak turrets, which is a huge issue because you tend to eat a ton of damage because of it. You see how low I am? Down to 7k health, and on fire. Down to 5k, and I pop my repair and my heal, and suddenly from the brink of death, the Nelson is brought back to a pretty damn healthy life. Of course, if I hadn't eaten those drops, whoops, that's what you get when you fire from the hip. Dispersion can troll you pretty heavily, or I might have been aiming just a tad too low. Regardless, it's not that big of an issue since he doesn't get another big volley off. But could have been risky, could have been risky. So we have turned them into a 4 versus 4. They still have a nice point lead though, but at least we are bringing the game back. And you can see just how much endurance this heal has been giving me during this constant fighting. The amount of damage I've been eating in this non-stop fighting and been able to recover. Thanks not only thanks to the extremely fast acting heal and fast reloading heal, but also of course because of how much it does heal. That guy should be dead. Nice. Now they only have an Omaha left. And honestly, the Bayern should be able to kill the Omaha extremely easily, allowing me to focus on the Atlanta. Because I need to kill him quite quickly, because they have 3 caps to R1, and trying to sail for the caps is in no way going to work. We need to secure some... We need to kill both of these guys. They are gonna deal with him, right? If I can't shoot the Atlanta, I might as well kill this guy off. No, Atlanta is spotted on the minimap. And looking at the minimap, he actually looks kind of grounded. Gonna see if I can punish him. Of course, shooting grounded targets is a huge issue in this game because the targeting goes all wonky when you shoot them. Sometimes the shells land in front of the target, sometimes the shell lands behind the target. It's like the targeting doesn't really know where to shoot people who are grounded. It just goes all over the place. I do get 1 pen, but as I mentioned, there's some general issues how the game handles that stuff. I'm still hoping for them to kill that Omaha so we have a chance of bringing this back, because this was a 5 versus 10 as I mentioned. Omaha finally dies so I can focus fully on the Atlanta, who is accelerating. Anyway, as I was saying, unlike the rest of the Royal Navy line that has the 381mm turret faces, this one actually has 406mm, I think it was 406mm turret faces, and they are also angled. So what this means is Nelson has the tankiest turrets of all the Royal Navy battleships. And this also means, of course, that you can angle quite happily against enemy ships. Once again, almost at the brink of death, brought back to healthy life. I waited, by the way, until I got unspotted before I popped that heal, because I've wanted to bait the Atlanta into thinking I'm an easy kill, he can just pop out and kill me, and then when I got undetected I used the heal, so he'd have a pretty damn nasty surprise if he popped up and thought he could easily kill me. However, Atlanta is smart. He actually uses his radar behind the island to see me, so now he of course knows that I am not the easy kill he hoped, and well, I expect him to either turn away or set up an ambush. My play would be to set up an ambush with the torpedoes and try to kill off the Nelson. That's a high possibility, but because there is this risk, although I think running away is probably a safer choice, but there is the risk you have to take into consideration. If you push around an island against a cruiser with torps or any sort of ships with torps, there's a high chance they're setting up an ambush. So I waited until his radar ran out, and only then did I change course. So hopefully the Atlanta thinks I'm coming around the left side of the island, when in fact I am sailing around the right side of the island. The enemy is already up to 930 points though, so even though we are mounting a comeback here, the problem is they have had so many caps. But the final thing about the turrets is very important, because unlike all the other, if you guys for example tested Royal Navy, the HMS Lion on the PTS, you might feel like, wow, these turrets break all the time. How is the Nelson going to be able to deal with this when it's constantly having its turrets angled towards the enemy? But that doesn't really happen to the Nelson, because much tankier, angled and much tankier turret faces helps it survive much easier. Enemy is up to 980 points at this point. So this is most... Well, is this going to be my last volley? I think it is. I expect him to turn away, so I aim a bit higher. And he does turn away as I predicted and sails underneath my shells. And basically at the very last second, we managed to turn what looked like a guaranteed loss into a victory. And unlike the last commenter in this one, you of course saw the insane effectiveness of the heal and how it allowed me to stay in a fight where I should have pretty much died, even though I don't think it wasn't the most maximized usage of the heal. I used my first heal early because I wanted to be safe. I wanted to ensure that I would have the heal up for during the fight, because I knew the fight would go on for a while because there were so many targets, so many enemies around. So it wasn't like any sort of optimal heal usage, but it just showed you how, if you get into an extended fight, just how much survivability this ship has. Base XP 2.3k. This would of course have been Kraken, probably Confederate, some devastating strike on the shores, and probably high caliber as well, like the usual stuff you would get. But of course, since this is a test ship, I don't get any achievements, so keep that in mind. And finally, of course, detailed report. And even though I ate that torpedo, which greatly limited my healing potential, and even though I didn't use my heals optimally, you can look at my damage received. Almost 120k. This is almost twice my own health pool. The health pool this ship has is 59.4k, and I almost tanked 118k. So it's almost twice my own health pool that I am tanking here. And this was not optimal usage of the heal. In fact, if you optimally use the healing on this ship, you can tank over 170k. So I could literally slap on almost one additional Nelson worth of health if I got to play safely the way I like to, and be able to use the heals optimally the way I like to, instead of being forced to push in because the enemy team was rolling over our team. So that just gives you an idea of just how much tanking potential. Potential damage 2.3 million. That sounds like a lot. It is pretty much for a tier 7 battleship, but for the Nelson it really isn't even that big of a deal, because as I said, so much tanking potential. I mean, HE spam on me 414 artillery shells hit me. And to put it into perspective, something like a Scharnhorst, if you optimally use all your healing on your Scharnhorst, I think you can tank something like 120k health, and the Nelson can tank over 170k. So in terms of effective health, it has like 40 to 50k more effective health than every other tier 7 battleship. So that should give you an idea of the tankiness of the ship, and it's of course amazing, and that is why this is one of the ships that I do absolutely recommend, because, well, there's no reason not to recommend it. This thing is a goddamn monster. Anyway, let's move on to my recommended build. Right, as usual, I will start with the modules. Not much to talk about since there are no exchangeable modules on this one. Consumable wise, I of course recommend running the premium repair and the premium heal, because, well, you're running a premium ship, you should be able to afford it. Upgrade wise, main armaments mod 1 and better accuracy. You could run the AA guns mod, but as I mentioned, your long range AA is pretty damn weak. 36 DPS isn't really going to shoot down anything. You can extend this to 6 km range if you go both AFT and the AA module, but ultimately it's still pretty damn sad. And in fact, most of your DPS is on these short range guns, and no matter how many AA mods you slap on top of this, you can't really get much range out of this one at all. The same issue applies to these, because the base ranges are just so bad. 2 and 2.5, it doesn't really matter how much you increase the range. If even a half decent carrier drops you, they will spend such a small amount within this short and mid-range AA that it's unlikely you will really be shooting down anything. So I just don't bother with it at all. Whether you choose to take the same approach is entirely up to you. Personally, I do not think it's worth it, because, well, problem with all AA range mods is that they are percentage based, and if the base value is terrible, then you're just basically adding a few % on top of something that is already bad. Damage control 1 and damage control 2, because I think the rudder shift at 15 seconds is pretty okay and just fine to deal with. And of course, as I mentioned, HE spam in general is a bit of a weakness to the Nelson because of course of the 25mm armor all over, well 32mm on the deck and sides, but the front is of course 25. So not that either of these value matters because most IFHE HE spam will pen both of these without any issues whatsoever. Captain perks wise, priority target. I actually prefer this one to the preventive maintenance, especially since the Nelson does have slightly tankier turrets, so having them knocked out hasn't been nearly as much of an issue as on the rest of the Royal Navy line. Adrenaline Rush, Superintendent, you want that additional heal, Concealment Expert, and Fire Prevention to reduce those fires. Once you have these, I would probably go for, well, Turret Traverse is quite nice, but thanks to the turret setup, you're really not as reliant on it, so whether you go for Vigilance first or for the Turret Traverse first is kinda up to you, but both are good options. The base Turret Traverse isn't really that good, so I think this benefits you a fair amount, but then on the other hand, torpedoes are a pretty damn hard counter to your heal, because if they hit the middle of your ship, you can't really heal it back because it counts as Citadel damage. So being able to dodge torps is very important as well. So which one you go for first kind of depends on your playstyle. You have issues with hitting torps, get Vigilance. You get frustrated with very slow turrets, get Expert Marksman. Ultimately though, this is the final build I recommend for the Nelson as of now. Gonna rehash of course the camo. Camo doesn't look too bad. This is the premium Nelson camo. Note that it only gives 50% XP in battle. That's all the bonuses this one gives, whereas if you compare it to Missouri camo, of course, we have 100% XP and 100% XP on the two different Missouri camos. So when it comes to both money and XP farming, it doesn't of course come anywhere, Nelson doesn't come anywhere near the Missouri, so keep that in mind. That is of course why I said, as I recommend, if you have, if you don't have the Missouri yet, save the XP for the Missouri. If you do have it yet, then this is a good sink for that free XP, since we have no idea when the next free XP ship might come out. But ultimately though, I would recommend saving up for the Missouri first, unless of course you're a massive Tiaboo and you just gotta have the British ships. Flag wise, highly recommend India Delta because your heal is so massive, so adding 20% on something massive is of course fantastic, and reduce fire and faster consumables. These are the bread and butter of pretty much all battleships, but Nelson especially benefits greatly from the India Delta flag. Anyway, that was my Nelson commentary, and as I said, this is a ship I do recommend. I think it's very, very strong. It does have some sets of weaknesses, but overall, thanks to the heal, it can work around them, and the fantastic turret placement, of course, allows you to quickly change courses while keeping your guns on target. So this ship is absolutely recommended by me, but only, I do add the caveat, recommended if you already have the Missouri. If you don't have the Missouri, get that one first. But other than that, absolutely certified recommended. Anyway, that was all for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it.